1993 was an eventful year for WWE. Not a great year, but an eventful one. Monday Night Raw debuted on January 11th, Hulk Hogan returned a month later, Jim Ross joined the broadcast booth not long after that. It wasn't all about new additions, however. The wrestling world said goodbye to Andre the Giant at the start of the year, while Ric Flair and Bobby Heenan both left for WCW before the year's end. Hulk Hogan, the golden goose who had laid all of those lucrative eggs, also left the company to try his hand at Hollywood. That meant a new blonde-haired, overly muscled pro-USA babyface was needed, resulting in the narcissist heel Lex Luger being suddenly transformed into a patriotic, flag-waving blue-eye. WWE did try to do new things as what would later be dubbed the New Generation began to take shape. Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Razor Ramon, Owen Hart, Jeff Jarrett, Yokozuna, 1-2-3 Kid, and the Steiners were all around and provided much quality amongst the Ludwig Borgers and Giant Gonzaleses of the day. It was a transitional time for WWE, whose topsy-turvy year was reflected in the varying quality of their 5 pay-per-view offerings. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and this is every WWE pay-per-view of 1993 ranked from worst to best. Join us. Number 5, WrestleMania 9. Let's start with a positive, shall we? Thanks to the Caesars Palace location and the good work of WWE's unheralded production people, WrestleMania 9 at least looked different and unique. Alright, now that's out of the way, it's time to discuss what makes this show one of the worst manias of all time. The tone was set early, with commentators Randy Savage and Bobby Heenan making grand entrances, and good old JR making his WWE debut, showing up wearing a toga. After that great introduction, it was time for some action, with the Intercontinental title bouts between Shawn Michaels and Tatanka a perfectly adequate way to kick things off. The work was decent enough, as you would expect, and Sherry and Luna were involved at ringside, spicing things up a little. But it was a bit too long, clocking in at a shade under 20 minutes, and a count-out finish is never the best way to begin your biggest show of the year. No problems with the Steiners and their victory over the Head Shrinkers, which certainly had its moments, even if it wasn't a classic or anything. And then the show falls off a cliff and does not recover. The memorable finish to Doink against Crush is good stuff, but the match that led to it was totally anemic. Ditto Razor Ramon's win over Bob Backlund, which was short but still showcased an odd clash of styles during its brief duration. If you're looking for an improvement in match quality with the Mega Maniacs, Hogan and Best Pal and Eternal Hanger-Oner Brutus Beefcake against Money Inc., Ted DiBiase and IRS, then you might want to look somewhere else. This was the Hulkster's first televised WWE match for a year, and the most noteworthy thing about it is the black eye he's sporting, the result of either a jet ski accident days before the show or a backstage right hook from the Macho Man, depending on who you believe. Beefcake's protective face mask is also a distracting eyesore, though necessary to shield his sore eyes. The match for the tag team titles was pure fluff, and the finish, with the Maniacs manager Jimmy Hart counting the pin before Danny Davis disqualified them for the earlier mask use, was dumb. Lex Luger's win over Mr. Perfect was massively disappointing, and it came out afterwards that Hennig had an off night, leaving it to Luger to lead the match. And the less said about The Undertaker versus Giant Gonzalez, which is genuinely one of the worst WrestleMania matches ever, the better. By the way, if anyone knows where to get a normal man-sized replica of the Giant's costume mined, please do let me know. As for the main event, Bret Hart and Yokozuna gave it a good go in their WWE title showdown, but again, the finish was pathetic, and the post-match Hogan scene stealing is still unforgivable. I would have rather seen 22 seconds of Bam Bam Bigelow scrapping with Kamala, a bout that was planned but cut from the show due to time, than that red and yellow menace hogging all the glory. Number 4, Survivor Series. The biggest rivalry heading into the 1993 Survivor Series was between America and its fiercest foe, not America. In the show's headliner, the All-Americans, Lex Luger, the Steiners, and The Undertaker, fought the Foreign Fanatics, Yokozuna, Ludwig Borger, Crush, and Quebecer Jacques. Nothing screams evil like a Samoan playing a Japanese sumo wrestler, a French Canadian, a man from Finland, and a Hawaiian, does it? The match was a long slog, almost going a full half hour, and fans only really reacted strongly for the portions that saw Yokozuna go up against The Undertaker, a program WWE would go in with in the not-too-distant future. After choking for much of the year, Luger wasn't going to blow this one here on the eve of Thanksgiving, and he managed to come out of things as the sole survivor after blasting the Hellraiser from Helsinki with the steel forearm of doom. Overjoyed that America had vanquished once again, Santa Claus came out after the match to join in the celebrations, obviously. As for the rest of the show, it was a real mixed bag. The opener between the teams of 1-2-3 Kid, Randy Savage, Razor Ramon and Marty Jannetty, and Adam Bomb, Diesel, IRS and Rick Martel was as good as the talent would suggest, and the crowd were into it, even if the middle section did drag a little. Kid and Party Marty survived. The match between the Hearts, Brett, Owen, Bruce and Keith, and Shawn Michaels and his Knights, Greg Valentine, Barry Horowitz and Jeff Gaylord under masks, felt like it would never ever end. And you know what? I'm not sure it has. The finish and post-match tease between Owen and Brett was good stuff, but everything leading up to it was a total snoozer. The match was originally supposed to be the Hitman leading his team against Jerry Lawler and his side, but the King ran into some legal trouble and had to sit this one out. All of the Hearts, bar the Rocket, survived. In a novel occurrence, the Smoky Mountain Wrestling Tag Team titles were defended as the Rock and Roll Express took on the Heavenly Bodies. An enjoyable slice of Southern wrestling pie. The recipe is 2 parts hot tag, 3 parts beating down the babyface, and half a squirrel. The crowd weren't tremendously invested here, as you would expect, but the work was good, and the title change presents a bit of genuine history as the first time a non-WWE title changed hands on a WWE pay-per-view. And if you're in the mood for a comedy match without a single laugh, I recommend you check out the team of Bam Bam Bigelow, Bastion Booger and the Head Shrinkers going up against the Doink Whackers and Doinks on a Mission. The 4 Doink substitutes survived, but if I'd had my way, I'd have killed them all. Number 3, the Royal Rumble. The Royal Rumble was a middling, fairly inoffensive show with no real standout match or performance. And that's exactly why it's in the middle here as the 3rd best pay-per-view of the year, or 3rd worst if you're a negative Nancy. The show began with the WWE pay-per-view debut of the Steiner brothers. Rick and Scott had been blowing audiences away across the globe for the previous 5 or so years, and expectations were high for the new arrivals here. Unfortunately, their routine victory over the Beverly brothers didn't exactly show just what they were capable of, but WWE fans finally got to see the dreaded Frankensteiner in person. The second bout of the evening was a massive improvement as Shawn Michaels defended the Intercontinental title against former Rockers partner Marty Jannetty. They would have better matches later on down the road, but this was still good, especially when you consider old Party Marty's blood was more vodka than plasma at this point. The lack of quality in Bossman and Bam Bam Bigelow's outing can be directly attributed to the fact that the man from Cobb County was on his way out of a promotion and was regularly jobbed out as a result. Neither man's finest hour, that's for sure. Much better was Bret Hart's solid WWE title defense against Razor Ramon, the one and only WWE title match the bad guy received in his career, which is pretty incredible if you think about it. This was typical Bret in that it was logical, employed tight psychology, and built to the finish as he tapped out Ramon with the sharpshooter. Textbook. And then it was time for the Rumble. It wasn't terrible, it wasn't great, it was just sort of alright, I guess. There were a lot of tag and lower card guys in there, and only a few believable winners like The Undertaker, Ric Flair, Randy Savage, and Yokozuna. Bob Backlund put in a shift lasting about an hour before being chucked. Giant Gonzalez debuted and kicked off his program with the Dead Man. Carlos Colon and Genichiro Tenryu were entrants too, because why not? In the end, it got down to Savage and Yokozuna, the big man tossing the Macho Man over the top after he inexplicably went for a cover following the big flying elbow. A dumb finish to finish off a completely meh pay-per-view. Number 2, SummerSlam. As mentioned previously, Hogan's departure opened a gap in the market for a clean-cut red, white and blue hero for Americans to look up to and hopefully take down that dastardly Yokozuna. After touring the country on the Lex Express and slamming Yoko on the USS Intrepid on the 4th of July, Luger was now the top babyface in the territory and gearing up for a clash with the WWE Champion at SummerSlam. Their bout had some stipulations. Luger was required to wear protective covering over his metal forearm, and if he failed to win the match, would receive no future shots at the WWE title while Yokozuna was champion. The match itself wasn't bad by any means, but again the finish left a lot to be desired, as Luger won by countout but then celebrated not winning the title with the rest of the babyface squad like he just won the friggin' lottery. While this was really the end of the road for Luger as a bona fide top contender, Bret Hart continued to regain his momentum earlier in the night, beating Doink the Clown by DQ before getting DQ'd himself in his tussle with Jerry Lawler. The whole thing was impeccably done and made the excellence of execution look like a star. In a WrestleMania rematch, The Undertaker beat Giant Gonzalez because somebody saw their absolutely dreadful Mania bout and said, "Yeah, doing that again's a really good, can't miss idea. I bet Mark would love to work with him again too." It was another shoddy match, as you would expect, though Taker did finally put an end to the whole Gonzalez in WWE affair by making the Giant rest in peace. It was a rest in peace match too, by the way, whatever the hell that means. Another star said goodbye to WWE at SummerSlam 93 as Ted DiBiase worked his last proper WWE match, losing to Razor Ramon in the show's opener. The Steiners defended their tag titles against the Heavenly Bodies in a gem of a match. Shawn Michaels' Intercontinental title defense against Mr. Perfect was practically built on the promise they were going to have a classic match for the ages, which is pretty much the kiss of death before the bell even rings, isn't it? On the night, the two sadly didn't click and had a match that was bang average with a crappy count-out finish to boot. IRS taxed the jaw of the 1-2-3 Kid in a fun squash match thanks to the efforts of the lively Waltman. Ludwig Borger made his WWE PPV debut by dismantling Marty Jannetty, swatting him away and battering the former Rocker like some sort of Nordic Brock Lesnar, minus most of the talent and credibility. And the Smoking Guns and Tatanka beat Bam Bam and the Head Shrinkers in a cobbled-together six-man. It was supposed to be a mixed tag featuring Sherry and Luna before Sherry left and Luna got injured, leading to that booking falling apart. For something that was thrown together, it turned out to be an absolute doozy and one of the highlights of a show that ranged in quality, but certainly offered variety and was a good effort overall. Number 1, King of the Ring. The best pay-per-view of 1993, which, in case you haven't noticed, wasn't the best year for WWE when it came to order-only events, was the King of the Ring, aka the Bret Hart Show. Were it not for the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be putting on 3 separate clinics, I don't think this show would be thought of so fondly today. On the night, the Hitman first overcame Razor Ramon in the quarterfinals, putting him away after reversing a top rope back suplex before he got past old foe Mr. Perfect in a blistering semi-final that's right up there with their SummerSlam 91 belter. Meeting him in the final was Bam Bam Bigelow, the Beast from the East, smashing through Jim Duggan and receiving a bye to the finals after Lex Luger and Tatanka fought to a dissatisfying time limit draw. In the final, Bret dug deep to overcome Bigelow, using his wily ways to score the pin with a victory roll. Really, each Bret match and performance is fantastic, but the overall story told is just excellently executed. Even the post-match attack, Jerry Lawler attacking the pink and black attack with his scepter, was well done and ended the event on a high point. Now, with that out of the way, let me say that a lot of the rest of the show was absolutely bollocks. HBK's IC title defense against Crush was yawn-inducing, while an 8-man tag match pitting the Smoking Guns and the Steiners against Money Inc. and the Head Shrinkers was a huge letdown. Hulk Hogan was on hand to do the favors and drop the WWE title to Yokozuna, having balked at passing the torch to Bret, despite having allegedly promised to lose the title to him. Now, this was Hogan, so you can bet that Yokozuna needed an exploding camera to get the job done in the Hulkster's last televised WWE match for almost a decade. The match wasn't very good. With Hogan on the outs, Yokozuna on top, and Bret Hart scratching and clawing his way to the summit, this was very much a changing of the guard type of show, as Vince McMahon went in a different direction and placed the emphasis on a new generation of performers.